What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another preview/prediction video for the Detroit Lions. And today, we got a big one. It's Lions, it's Vikings, it's a battle for first place in the NFC North as of now. It's against an undefeated Vikings team at their place, the place where the Lions won the NFC North crown last season. So let's get it started. Welcome everybody to another video. Glad you guys are here. And yes, we are back with another preview/prediction video. This video is also being brought to you by BetUS. So use promo code YouTube150 down in the description below to get a 150% deposit match on your first deposit and a 125% match on your next two deposits. Let's take a quick look at BetUS's website. Again, that's promo code YouTube150 to get a 150% deposit match on your first deposit. And you can see that with all the different sports that you can bet on, an NBA right around the corner starts this week, so maybe you can get some futures bets if you're looking at the NBA championship. You got politics on here that you can bet on. Of course, have our player prop bets, which will either be posted today or tomorrow. And then, of course, we have the racebook and casino. Wanted to go through and pick one of the upsets that I like for this week and place a money line bet. So as we roll through here, you can see the current spreads. As of the time I'm recording, these are subject to change. We can go to the Lions side. As of now, the Lions are still technically underdogs for this game at +1. So if you feel good about the Lions winning, this might be one to throw some money on because they're +1. They are underdogs at +105 in this game. However, I'm going to go over here to the Tennessee Titans, and this is one of the upsets that I actually like this week. Now, maybe I should play it safe, go with the 9.5 points, say they keep it close. The over-under is only 41, so I think it makes a lot of sense that they keep this within 10 points. But I actually like the upset just outright here. I think the Titans defense has been very underrated this season. Tony Pollard, can he have a big game? Maybe. I make a bet on the money line at +370. So at that line, let's say we were to risk $20. If Titans win this football game, I'd win $74. So we're going to place that bet. If you guys want to get in on this action, go over here to BetUS, YouTube150. That is the promo code. At very least, just make an account. Check it out. Today, we're here with a very exciting preview/prediction video. If you're new to these videos, basically go through both the Vikings offense and defense. What do I expect in this game? Guys that I think are going to be key players in this game. Some predictions for the game and how this will play out. And at the end, I give you my score prediction. Last week, we hit on some things that we talked about in the preview. I think we actually nailed a few things. And hearing Mike Zimmer after the game, I felt like we nailed the aggression when he was playing from behind and how that could change things for that Cowboys team. So I thought we nailed that little detail of it. So today, I'm still looking for the perfect score prediction. We've been close a few times, but I feel good about this week. I had to tweak it a little bit. I'm feeling good about this week. But also, before we get into all of that, I want to quickly just kind of update the injury situation for both sides as of right now. So starting off on the Lions side of things, the big one for me, Kevin Zeitler, it sounds like he's going to be out for this game. He had rest to begin practice. Then on Thursday, he had a little bit of a hip injury, which is never great during the week for that to pop up. And in his place, KO'd would be the guy to step in, of course, our starting right guard. So it sounds like he's probably going to miss this game, which is a huge blow for this team. But I think schematically speaking, in some ways, I don't want to say it'd be a positive, but I think that he could actually fit pretty well for how we may do things schematically in terms of just rushing the football into this game. So just keep an eye on that because he was also really good in pass protection last time in the last game that he started for us. Now, this is a different monster, mainly because of how much they blitz, what it really comes down to. So he's going to have a lot on his plate, and I'm sure they'll go at him if he's out there. But KO'd, we trust him. He'd be stepping in if Zeitler can't play. Also, Carlton Davis, according to Dan Campbell, trending in a better direction towards playing for this game. He said he'd be out there, speaking of Friday, at practice for Carlton Davis after beginning the week with rest. So getting out there, moving around. Not a guarantee that he will play. If he can't, we expect Kendall Vildor to step into that spot. That's who stepped in so far this season. But I'm really hoping Carlton can play. I think he's played Justin Jefferson really well in the past. I think he wants to play in this game a ton. He's coming off a really strong game against CeeDee Lamb. He's going to be massive so many ways in this football game. And I think he's in line for a really good game for the Lions. So hopefully he can go in this one. On the Vikings side of things, the big one is with their offensive line. It doesn't sound like they're going to get Dalton Risner back just yet for this week. So Ed Ingram probably still going to start at right guard for them. And then also TJ Hockenson, sounds like he's not going to be back just yet for the Minnesota Vikings either. He, as we know, is currently on IR. However, the big news for them is that Aaron Jones, it sounds likely that he's actually going to play in this game. Their top tier running back that has completely changed that rushing attack this season. They look completely different when he's out there versus when he's not out there. The vision, of course, the pass game impact is massive. Like, it changes everything. The matchup that they can find on linebackers with him. He had a huge play against the New York Jets. So sounds like he's going to go, as well as Harrison Phillips, who I feel is one of the most underrated players, one of the best players on this Vikings defense. And every time we face them, he gives us some sort of problems. Now, first with the run defense for Minnesota, which statistically this season has been incredible, allowing 3.6 yards per carry, 67 yards per game with a 9.6 expected points added on run defense. They have been incredible against the run, and you can see it. It's very visible when you watch them. They're very effective against the run. Some of that kind of, I think, stems back to their blitzing mentality, their ability to create negative plays. Their linebackers have played incredibly fast so far this season, and as I said, they have a very underrated piece there in Harrison Phillips, but they also have an upgraded edge defender position this year. Andrew Van Ginkel's been very big against the run. They got a lot of slippery backers that can make guys miss, but also when you have a guy like Jonathan Greener now into the mix versus where they were at that position last season, they're better at setting the edge. I don't feel them getting exposed on some of those stretch runs like we saw at times last season. I just think they're a much more well-rounded group. Now, that doesn't mean they're perfect on the defensive line. Jerry Tillery, to me, is a guy who's been good this season, but he's someone that could definitely be attacked. I think the Lions should look at leaning a little bit heavier into kind of the inside rushing attack. They love the outside zones. They love the stretch plays. I understand that, and if that works and you can go at that throughout this game, might as well do it. We saw it last year against Minnesota. That being said, though, I do think that against this team who plays a lot of guys across that front line, so as we saw last year we played Minnesota, it's like, hey, they can be very tough to get past that first level, but if you do, you have a chance to break a lot of big-time runs against this team. And for me, in this game, because of the matchups I've seen for them, I love more of the inside rushing attack. I love the duo run scheme. I love the strong double teams at the point of attack. I love attacking Jerry Tillery, who a lot of times has lined at that 3 technique role for this defense. Even going at Harrison Phillips at the point of attack, who I think moves so well laterally, he can be a little bit difficult once you start to go sideline to sideline against this team. I like going downhill. I feel like this is a great game for David Montgomery to lean on Montgomery. And as I said, when you pop those big runs, you're going to pop those big runs into the second level. That being said as well, a couple little things here. First off, wouldn't be surprised if the Lions try to run the ball a little bit more out of 11 personnel looks in this game. When you get 11 personnel because of how they match personnel wise, a lot of times you'll also get more 4-man front looks. I think it can lead to more consistent success in 11 personnel looks with 1 tight end, 1 back versus having 2 tight ends or some of that super heavy personnel we know Lions like to lean into, though it does sound like Dan Skipper is going to be available to go in this game. And meanwhile, flipping it around into some more of that 12 personnel look when passing the football, stacking the line of scrimmage for them defensively, opening up so the flat route concepts, and just kind of opening up that second level to pass into. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions went a little bit lighter offensively to try to run the ball in this game, and I think downhill rushing style works against this offense as well. I would lean into it in this game. You utilize some of that outside rushing attack. We've seen sweeps, we've seen stretches this season. I do prefer the stretch runs against this defense rather than sweeps and their ability to create negatives in those spots. I do think stretch runs can be effective against this team as well. Gibbs, that could be effective, but it could also be very effective with Montgomery in this game. And another thing that we've seen a lot of teams utilize against this Vikings defense has been a lot of counter pull runs, and that's where you can get some of the boom or bust. Linebackers will fill and you'll pick them up cleanly at the second level, or they'll fill in properly and all of a sudden you shoot a massive run. The challenge on these plays is getting clean connection up to that second level where they are incredibly slippery. That being said, though, with them slanting and stepping into these gaps and shooting these gaps from the inside, that's where you can create some of these down blocks and shoot up to the second level. But then there's also the flip side where they create negatives. They slide off of blocks. They slide off a bigger offensive lineman. You can definitely have success sealing these blocks and getting up to the second level. Watch Ivan Pace Jr. right here, number 0. This is slippery. He reads the counter pull, slides by the tight end. Then even off the backside, you see Cashman here stepping down and kind of clogging up the run lane. And they're creating tackles for loss. I think the counter pull may very much so be utilized in this game. They also have a tendency to put guys like Josh Metellus in the box. So again, they're a little bit lighter there, which is where you see teams utilize counter pull, try to get these linebackers upfield and then be able to break big runs off of those setups. Wouldn't surprise me to see some real misdirection in this game. So I look for misdirection and downhill inside rushing. That's what I would probably lean on in this game. I think that's where we could find consistent success, especially if KO'd plays. I think that's just an area that he's really good for the Lions. They'll trust their interior to handle a little bit more responsibility. So here, 12 personnel, 5-man front. They're going to kick over each gap. Then Phillips is going to be able to play through multiple gaps here. But that opens up Ivan Pace to just shoot up field and create a tackle for loss through the B gap. Key matchup to watch, of course, will be Harrison Phillips against Frank Ragnow. That's always the matchup I come back to. Frank Ragnow is going to play in this game. And like I said, Harrison Phillips is an absolute animal as a run defender. So I would look to get downhill against this team. Now, one thing that I like about the stretch run is it can really impact kind of how they play defensively and how they fill their gaps and their gap integrity. So here you see the motion, which pulls Van Ginkel out of the box and steps in Harrison Smith. But then here on the backside, that forces a defensive end to fill through the B gap, and he can't on this stretch run play on the backside. So now Cashman, who's on the play side of this, on the front side of this play, is not in a great position to step back and scrape over and make the play, and they're able to get upfield here with this cutback run. These linebackers are fast to fill, they're slippery, they're quick, but it doesn't sound like there's going to be Blake Cashman in this game. So in his place, we have Gruger Hill, we have Ivan Pace, another guy that's super downhill in this game, and you get a lot of gap slanting from this defensive front due to a lot of that high blitz rate. You'll get stepping down gaps, bringing guys off the edge, and that's where they try to create negatives, but again, it could also open up those big broken runs, and I think Montgomery's in line to have a couple of broken runs going downhill. Transitioning over to the pass defense for the Vikings, this has gotten all the attention so far this season, is the pass defense that the Vikings have, the disguise that they run defensively. Nobody knows what's happening, and they've done a terrific job. And to me, I think just a big part of what they've been defensively this season versus last year is twofold. It's one, they've been elite against the run, so teams haven't been able to just kind of lean on the run game, take that aspect out of the football game. The Lions can do that. They can really minimize all of this movement defensively that they have if we could just gash them over and over on the ground game and really simplify things. So there's that aspect. They've been great against the run. They've played really well up front, and their investments have paid off of how much they blitz defensively. They're blitzing at a 41% rate. It leads the NFL according to Pro Football Reference. That's who this Vikings defense is, and because they have so much flexibility within their personnel this year versus last year, where Harrison Smith would move around, Metellus would move around, you had Cameron Bynum, you had guys that could play different spots defensively, and you could kind of rotate through safeties, but this year they have versatility in their front seven, so now you're getting guys like Van Ginkel, who is constantly used to drop into coverage. You're limiting the exposure of a guy like Ivan Pace in coverage by just blitzing him constantly, and he's been a very successful blitzer. Like, you have guys that fit into specific roles and are doing that really well at a pretty high level. At the same time, you have a ton of flexibility within that front seven that I just don't think that you had last season. So to me, those two things have really put together such a strong and efficient defense this year that is really similar in terms of all the creativity they do pre-snap, but now with just simply better personnel that I'm seeing. That being said, and also when the offense scores and they're playing from a lead every single game, that helps. Pretty optimistic and pretty confident going into this game because of what I saw the Lions do last season. I won't bore you with that, but Ben Johnson, two of his greatest, I thought, game-calling games were against Minnesota last season. It shook me the first time. I did not expect it to be that good for the Lions offense, and then they went back a couple weeks later and did it again. Again, personnel was different. We know that their offense was in a different place, even though they did score a lot against us, but Ben Johnson had such a great plan for attacking this team defensively, and I do feel like the way the Lions like to play and the way that they're comfortable with playing is also the way that Minnesota doesn't want teams to play the game, and I think because of the way that they play, they get teams into trouble, but I think they get teams like the Lions into less trouble because of the way we like to play, and instead we can make underneath passes and checkdowns, really expose them defensively and get them into trouble. So our personnel, Sam Laporta, Jamison Williams, who showed up last year after the catch, Jahmyr Gibbs, these guys that are so effective with the ball in their hands, and Goff is very comfortable just like get the ball immediately on the play. Because of that, not looking for the big play, I think that we match up better with the Minnesota Vikings just because of how we like to play offensively. That being said, still a super heavy blitzing team, but they've been adjusting to who they've seen. For example, they saw the Jets, saw a lot more man coverage versus the Green Bay Packers, where they kind of pulled back and they're like, all right, let's lean a little bit more zone here. Still gonna blitz, but we're not going to do as much straight cover one man coverage against this team because I think personnel-wise, they are very solid at corner. They're very well-rounded. I don't think they have a shutdown corner. Now, the stats, the pass rating allowed, those things will say that. I haven't seen that with Stephon Gilmore, who I think transitions pretty slow at the top of the routes as of now. Opposite corner in Griffin, who I think is the one guy that you should definitely look to attack. And then Byron Murphy, who kind of can do it all. He played some safety at times this season. He could do it all for them defensively. Another very solid corner, very good at contesting a lot of passes. But overall, I don't feel like they have shutdown corners across the board. So I think their pass rating reflects more of what they are as a defense versus what they are individually in those spots, which is why, schematically speaking, you'll see them adjust depending on who they are playing. As a whole, though, this is a defense that to me will absolutely give up the flats. A lot of Tampa 2 looks, a lot of inverted Tampa 2 looks, as well as a lot of blitzing, as we talked about, cover 3, cover 4, blitzing off of that, which for me, you can work between those linebackers and cornerbacks. You can open up the flats in those spots, especially if they're going to lean into continuing to blitz heavy, and also you can work the middle middle of the field as well if you create heavy level concepts and you also have a quarterback that's willing to take the check down, that's willing to go underneath, because these linebackers play with so much depth. They make it very difficult to live on second level throws. They pretty much take away second level throws. That feels like kind of the staple of this defense, whether it's inside or outside. Like, second level is going to be hard to hit. Our linebackers are going to play with a lot of depth. We're going to drop out at the snap. We're going to go to zone coverage. You're going to have to take that little underneath check down that you may not want to take. And for the Lions, they're comfortable doing that, and they're also comfortable quickly working into the flats, and that's why I see them having success against this defense. Because overall, all these things that they have and all this movement, at the end of the day, coverage is coverage, right? You can have all these things to hide what coverage you're going into, but once you get to that coverage, that's the coverage that you're in. It's like we've seen all these looks in terms of like, hey, this is cover 3, this is cover 6, this is cover 4. We've seen these things. It's just the amount of blitzing they do with the 6-man rush, which is pretty unique. A lot of times teams blitz, they bring 5 rushers, especially in zone. Minnesota will bring 6 rushers. They'll play with 1 underneath defender, and we constantly see that out of that cover 0 look where they put everybody on the line, and then they go quarters coverage and they drop 1 player out underneath, which is oftentimes Andrew Van Ginkel, and that's where you get those crazy exotic looks. That being said, though, again, the best way to simplify that, be able to run the football well and stay on top of the chains. I think as a whole, when you talk about how to success against this defense, be willing to play on top of the chains, be willing to pick up 3 to 4 yards on first down. And again, a lot of teams haven't been able to live in the run game because they're shutting down the run. They're being aggressive against the run. So if you can't lean into that, then immediately you're pulling yourself out of spots where they can start to do all of this exotic stuff. But it's hard to do that. They do that because they play with the league constantly, and they do that because they shut down the run and it's 2nd and long. So be willing to make it 2nd and 6. All of a sudden, this zone coverage that's backing up, that is giving you the flats and giving you these checkdowns, now we have the playmakers that work so well after the catch where we're picking up chunks out of that rather than having to push it down the field. So as a whole, I just like how the Lions match up against this team defensively, but of course they're going to be tested because of the personnel that I think is just much better. Another key aspect of this, I already tapped on the blitzing, but they blitz so much and they bring so many 6-man rushes. Running back pass protection. Every game I've seen so far for the Vikings, running back pass protection from the opponent is massive. How do they do in those spots? The good thing is I really like our running backs pass pro. Gibbs and Monty have both been spectacular. Now, you can, of course, throw the football to those guys instead, which they've done a really good job of actually covering up a lot of screens. Like we've seen teams use, tight end flat screens. We've seen that, and they've taken it away because their edge rushers will drop out. They're having really good run support from the defensive backs, another big strength of this team. I don't think they're shut down across the board, but my goodness, they have defensive backs that can absolutely tackle against the run, and they'll step down. They're willing to, their safeties. So there's no fear there. Screens in general. So I would look at a little bit more mid screens, middle of the field screens, trying to get their defensive linemen upfield and kind of working behind it. Consistently, the other matchup to me is our running back versus Ivan Pace. They kind of take him out of a lot of coverage responsibilities, and at first I was like, okay, I kind of wonder why, and then I saw him and I was like, ooh, he gave up a lot of space there in coverage, and then you look and you're like, that makes a lot of sense. He's not great in coverage so far this season, and they really have limited the spots they put him in those spots. A good pressure team this season, 32%, second highest in the league. Now, obviously, that's not the same in terms of their blitz rate. I don't think they're maybe the best pressure team in football, but they're good there, and they have guys that can win, and the problem with this defense is they don't have, to me, a stack of elite players, but they have a pretty well-rounded group where Harrison Phillips will come through with a few wins a game. You'll also get Greener now, who's picking up a few wins a game at the edge position, and then Pat Jones has come on this season with the scheme that they've done, and then you tie in all the blitzing with it, you get a pretty high pressure rate from this team as well. So this just more so emphasizes, hey, don't make it 2nd and 10. On to 2nd down, we're going to get blitz looks. That's where I would like to see the Lions utilize running back screens. You'll see the Vikings do it to teams offensively. I think you can flip that around, use that against them. Also, another quick kind of coverage note here, Tampa 2, which is something they do a lot defensively, right? It's one of their disguises. They'll show the line, they'll drop out Tampa 2, and a lot of times they have a lot of flexibility because they don't need like a linebacker to play the kind of that middle field role. They'll put a safety in that spot. They have a lot of guys that play different roles in Tampa 2, so they're very flexible in who actually has to do it. They can invert, cornerback, Stephon Gilmore go to safety. So because they can do that and go from a lot of different spots. That being said, though, what makes them tough in these Tampa 2 roles is they constantly seek out the dig routes. They constantly seek out the dagger concepts, which again speaks to the fact that they are doing everything they can to take away the second level. They don't want to give you the clear out and then hit the chunk play. Now, they did at times against Green Bay and they didn't execute, but that's something they seek out. I think they understand what they are doing schematically and what teams feel the beater is to that. So again, that just speaks more so to have success on early downs, have success on first downs. That way you can limit some of those spots and make it difficult for them to sit in those covers. They're going to have to crank up a different type of coverage. Spots and Goff has done a great job on Tampa 2 looks to just quickly get the ball to his check down. So on first down, what do you typically see? see, to me, I typically see the most used is a cover 3 blitz. Now, this is where you can open up the middle of the field, specifically between linebackers. You can open up middle of the field underneath. I think you have to do a really good job in this game creating levels concepts. A couple things the Lions did last season: levels, overloading one side of the field, 3-by-1 looks offensively. Fast motion was a big part of that because you have to create spacing, and they did that with fast motion. They could push out a zone defender to open up a big opening for Jared Goff to throw the ball into. So they created spacing with motion, and then again, also overloading with levels. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be middle of the field. If it is, right, you want 3 levels: underneath, deep, middle of the field. If it's towards the flat, same thing, right? You want flood concepts, flat, out, deep route. You want these overloaded zone beaters because a lot of times in zone, that's what gets you is when a zone is overloaded, that's the problem you fall into. So on first down, when you get those cover 3 blitzes, that's where I think the middle field actually opens up a little bit more, is the early downs, and then you'll get some of the cover 4 blitzes, as we'll talk about in kind of that zero look, as well as cover 6 blitzing. I think that they're okay with you trying to take shots downfield. They get you into trouble because teams won't play the game of like, we're going to play slower football, we're going to check it down, we're going to play underneath, and just trusting that, hey, your playmaker, let your playmakers go to work after catch. It doesn't have to be the quarterback putting it out there to make the play. Onto the second down aspect of this thing, this is where they typically blitz. This is where if they didn't blitz on first down, they're going to heavily blitz on second down. Now, second and short, it's a little bit different. A lot more times they're going to drop out, no blitzing in those spots. And actually, weirdly enough, you'll get like Tampa 2 drops out of like 2nd and 3, which is strange, but that's what they'll do when they won't blitz in those spots. Sometimes you'll even get like 8-man drops in those spots. So there's a lot of, again, just flexibility within what they do defensively. If you're getting that, you want to run the football against them. If it's second and short like that, that's the ideal, is that you can run the ball in those spots because, again, a lot of teams haven't been able to just lean on that. So Lions need to find a way to lean on that, as well as on second down, again, cover 4 blitzing. This is mostly used in the second and medium spots. This is where they show zero coverage. They drop out. They play cover 4. They drop usually one underneath. And essentially it looks like cover 0 because they're just playing one-on-one across the board. But that being said, it's a little bit more of just a pure quarters look because of how their defense backs play it. But it's kind of the same idea, right? We're going to drop out. We're going to bring everybody. We're going to drop one into kind of the passing lane that we think you want to go to. We'll put him in the slot. Get away from that quickly because we're bringing everybody. So you'll get that cover 4 kind of blitz look in those spots, which again can make it difficult to run because they're stacking the line of scrimmage, but it can also create potential chunk plays if you get the ball out quickly, you get it out into the flats, and you're able to work away from that heavy line of scrimmage look. Here to be a little bit more of their base cover 4, even though again they try to disguise these looks. You can also see the fast motion that Green Bay uses, and they end up opening up the middle of the field here on this play because there's only 3 underneath defenders. But it being 2nd and 10, which is not where you want to be, notice how deep their linebackers are playing versus here on a 3rd and medium where they just quickly see, let's get the out route, let's tackle outside the numbers. I think this outside the numbers, quick passing game, pushing guys, clearing out these outside the numbers throws can be very beneficial. This is why you can open up these like little swing screen routes, maybe out to the running back, like have him swing outside. Now here within these cover 4 looks, here would be a similar example to that where they try to set up this flat screen, maybe trying to go back to the back here, but you notice Van Ginkel dropping out. He's constantly the guy that drops out. Now to play like this, I do like, because again, Van Ginkel is going to show and then drop. I do like the play action look under center, how it really gets everybody to bite. It does open at second level throw, but you have to be willing to get these quicker throws out of your hand fast. You got to hit that back foot, get the ball out. So I like the under center look to really sell the run, but on a play like this, cover 4 blitz, they're leaving someone vacated. You got to find a flat here. Can't be looking for just a shot play and trying to push the ball so far down the field. Another play like this, cover 4, you got the middle of the field here. You can see the depth they want to create, but you create levels. You get in front of these safeties, which you absolutely can. You just have to make the play. Get a little bit further, like 6 to 7 yards, you'll go back to that kind of cover 3 blitz look. Then everything beyond that, like 10 plus, you get a lot of 2-man looks from this team. You also see that in the red zone as well, a lot of 2-man cover, 2-man spots, where the key there for me is clearing out and then working beneath that, right? Finding your one-on-one matchups. I could be wrong. I like the Lions one-on-one matchups pretty much across the board here. I like St. Brown's matchup, if that's on Byron Murphy. It's probably my least favorite one, just because I think Byron Murphy is a stud. But outside of that, I like us against Gilmore. I like us against Griffin a ton. I think that he has some struggles, and I don't trust him in the same way that I trust Gilmore with some of the zone field and jump routes. But Stephon Gilmore, very instinctive, just doesn't transition right now that well. I think JMO could give him real problems in this game. I like Laporta on Metellus. Metellus has played well. He's been an elite run defender. He plays like a backer, but I like that matchup. I just like a lot of the Lions matchups one-on-one in this game. So win those spots, clear out routes, create one-on-ones, and give your guys an opportunity. And I think a lot of times we're going to get guys open. Down, you get the third and long situations. That's where you kind of see again that Tampa 2 look. They want to be protective over top. You also go back to kind of that quarters look of showing the blitz. We're going to drop out of it. Versus if you're the Jets, they went a lot more into just pure man coverage. They did a little bit less of the zone, more pure man, more cover 1, more cover 2, man. They just went straight man coverage, single high safety or 2 high safeties in those third down positions. Against the Lions, expect to see a little more zone coverage. I don't expect them to lean as heavily man coverage. I think we'll probably see a little bit heavier dosage of the cover 3 looks to try to get an extra defender into the flats. That way they can't just clear out and get an easy, one-on-one into the flat. So I would expect a little bit more cover 3 from them defensively, probably tag along the blitz because that's just who they are. I would expect that's the look that we're going to get from this team defensively, which to me is where the middle of the field can open up early by creating levels concepts, as well as just getting the ball out to the flats, taking the checkdowns, trusting your tight ends in the spots. Here in this cover 3 look, they get kind of this mesh setup. Roger just doesn't see the little sit down route and throw it. Plus, you're also, of course, going to get your one-on-ones towards the outside. I think using some of these condensed formations could allow you to potentially try to create one-on-ones with Gilmore or Griffin out wide and some deep out routes with Patrick, guys like that. But then again, also cover 3, that's where you want to create flood concepts. And I just think flooding sides of the field works really well against Minnesota. And in those spots, using jet motions, using end around looks to kind of pull these guys out towards the sideline. I would expect a little bit more of that coverage defensively against us, knowing who we are. You get in those red zone situations, you get again kind of like a quarters look, but they do a little bit more of a palms look in coverage. The difference is their linebackers will play the vertical seam rather than passing off the number 3. They'll actually play the number 3. So a lot of times you get like a 5-man look over top. So they're just protecting vertically in those plays. They want you to work underneath. As the 2-man looks, again, they're going to protect from the shot play, and that's where you have to clear out and have guys kind of just win underneath. That's where Gibbs can become incredibly impactful. I think it's not a bad parlay to look at that number again. I like Monty in this one just because I think he's going to be on the field a lot, but regardless, either of those guys could be very effective. I would say Sam Laporta is in for a very massive game potentially because him a lot of times use the chip, flat, slow down the rush, get out into the flat, utilize underneath as a check down piece, utilize with the run after catch. He's probably another guy that could be massive in this game just because of the amount of targets that he may get. But overall, the mindset offensively is you must avoid falling behind the chains. They're going to want to stack the line of scrimmage in those spots. They're going to want to play Tampa 2 if you're backed up. Heck, if you're on your own end zone, we saw it against the Packers, they'll play Tampa 2 in those spots. Against the Jets, they'll play Tampa 2 in those spots. And the problem is they stack the line of scrimmage. You lose bodies to run routes, so now you're forced to chip flat. You're forced to keep guys in. All of a sudden, you got less routes downfield. They're dropping onto coverage, and you're just losing numbers, so it's harder to push the ball down the field. It's harder to get second level because they have so many bodies in those spots that you're forced to go underneath, and that's where they want to get you. So you have to avoid falling behind the chains. You have to just live with positives on first down, in my opinion. Take the easy. Minnesota does not want you to. Also, attempt to overload coverage. Use that pre-snap fast motion, unbalanced formations. That's what I expect. Creating spacing. That's their defense. Now, on the flip side of things, offensively, this has been an offense that's been incredibly effective this year. Of course, shout out to Sam Darnold, man. Sam Darnold's played his butt off. That being said, though, honestly, I thought Sam Darnold was playing better than I think that I walked away feeling how Sam Darnold has played so far this season. Sam Darnold's been good, and I think he's done a couple things exceptionally well. Number one, he's constantly gotten this team into the right place, seemingly offensively. He's done a really good job at the line of scrimmage, getting guys wide open on plays. Kevin O'Connell's, of course, a huge part of that. They seem to script really well at the beginning of games while they constantly are playing with the lead. Nobody's surprised the Lions come out and hey, they get stopped on their first drive, they do a fake punt. They want to play with the lead a ton in this game because, again, the Vikings have played with the lead all season long. You make them play from behind, it could be a completely different game. So they've seen the script well. He's getting his team into the right play constantly, it feels like Sam Darnold is. And he's also doing a nice job of avoiding negatives in terms of not really taking sacks. If he feels pressure, he gets out and he throws the ball away. Even on third down, he'll throw the ball away. I know Lions fans don't like that, but he will. Now, when it comes to rushing the football, having Aaron Jones changes everything. He is a great zone runner that does a great job with cutback lanes, running after contact, versus a guy like Ty Chandler who feels a little bit more downhill, explosive. I see more trap runs, but Jones is likely to play, and he's the big threat. He's also a big threat in the pass game as well, as we touched on. For me, I look at this Vikings offense, and I know this may sound backwards, but I look at them and I think focus on the run first. Shut down the run game. That has been a very big difference from this year to last year as the Vikings have found a pretty nice run game. And again, especially early in games, I would focus on let's take away the run first, more so make Sam Darnold beat you. Now, in saying that, it's kind of a little bit unfair because that's also saying hey, make Justin Jefferson beat you. It's well, yeah, he can do that. But really, I think the focus has to be stop stop the run first. And usually it is, but that's how I'm looking at it. Even in shell coverage, right? You go quarters, right? If you want to go cover 4 on first down, bring your safeties up to an aggressive depth. I think the focus has to be stop the run. Now, the positive is I think this is maybe the Lions' biggest strength. Obviously, without Hutch, it's going to be a little bit different. But overall, they have a great interior, they have great backer play. I just think that that's the way you have to play and approach this game. And we're going to talk about this as a whole, but just a quick note here. I think there's a couple ways to go about this. This is a team who do a lot of under center work on early downs. They're going to get a lot of strut plays on early downs because of that, and they do a great job in pass protection. They have been excellent in pass pro. I know that they don't have Reisner, but they still been great in pass pro. They have really good tackle play. Their running backs pick up well. Their tight ends are blocking their butts off. They look like offensive tackles out there. They are tough to create pressure on, especially on first and second down, whether it's play action or just straight drops. Tough to create pressure on. Now, the weakness of the offensive line is through the center to the right tackle. Ed Ingram specifically has had some struggles in pass protection so far this season, and Garrett Bradbury can get a little bit over his skis, but at the right tackle position in O'Neal, that's where teams tend to kind of overload that side of line of scrimmage. Now, I've seen Darrisaw lose a few times with some of the nice spin moves, some of the finesse pass rush. He's very good at locking opponents out and playing with a lot of strength and not getting bull rush very often, so I think that matchup may be a little bit difficult. He's gotten beat this year, but I think that may be a little bit difficult, so I expect the right side where the Lions to go, and the hope is with DJ Reader and Ali McNeil and Levi, guys working in the interior, that's the area where you can have success is their 2 guards, one-on-one. So especially in early downs, transitioning, run to pass, it's going to be a must. Those guys could bring something to the table that I haven't seen the Vikings have to deal with this season, which is elite interior defensive lineman play outside of Quinn and Williams that could potentially shake the game. Because of that, knowing Aaron Glenn, part of you could look at it and say, well, let's just kind of do some occasionally dropping it into coverage. Like, don't even worry about it then. Make him just have nothing open, take off and run. And then he'll have to find his checkdowns, which a lot of times is actually his biggest threat, his legs and his checkdowns. But really, for me, knowing Aaron Glenn, I expect to see him be very aggressive and not kind of like passive aggressive, which it felt like the Jets were, where it was like, okay, they're blitzing kind of, but they're kind of waiting. I don't think it's going to look like that. I wouldn't be surprised if slot blitzing comes back out again from Aaron Glenn, that he is going after these guys. He's at very least bringing a 5-man rush a lot on first down, maybe 6 on first down. Now, I think second and third, that may change up. But on first down, I expect him to be going after this team because he knows he doesn't have Hutchinson in this game, so you're not going to get that kind of pressure alone. And if you don't have Hutchinson, the truth is they just have a really good offensive line that's pass protected well. But because of the under center play action shots, I think he's going to want to do everything he can to try to create some negatives. Don't be surprised at all if you get some heavy blitzing, like legitimate blitzing on early downs against his team. Obviously, there's downside that could turn into a big chunk play, but I just wouldn't be surprised. Now, there is the balance of that where you could say, well, hey, don't do that. That's playing into their hands. They're going to leave a lot of guys in pass pro anyway. Just drop out in coverage because they're only going to have a couple receivers even on route trees at times early downs. That's a fair point. Very aggressive on first down. We're going to create a negative. We're going to have you taking sacks. We're going to make you uncomfortable in play action. We don't want you comfortable. I think they may kind of dip into that book a little bit, dabble into that, which teams have done against us in our kind of play action look. So focus on the run first. I think you have to be legitimately aggressive if you're going to do it. You can't play an in-between game. Blitzing is effective as well as simulated pressure against this team because really where you get sacks is you get it by guys being unblocked, not by guys necessarily winning that often. Usually it's a slot blitz because they don't pick it up, or it's a simulated pressure where you get a one-on-one with their backs who are pretty good, but you get a one-on-one with their back with the backer, and that's usually where your pressure is going to come from, more so than just like, hey, we brought 5 and we got one-on-ones across the board, somebody's getting there. It's, to me, that's why it may make sense the Lions go 6-man rushes a lot more in this game, overload the heck out of it on early downs when he's under center, not when he's in the gun, but he plays so much under center when he's under center, and also bringing slot rushes and then simulating pressure off that. We bring the slot, we drop out a defensive end, and we try to simulate, not actually bring a blitz, but do that to not only help us against a pass, but also potentially help us against this run game, which I think is where it all starts. Because when you look at this rushing offense, they do a lot of inside zone runs towards the strong side, and to me, their tight end position has made that happen. Munt and Isaiah Oliver have been really good run blockers, and especially without Hutchinson, where you don't have that guy that you feel like just going to dominate their tight ends one-on-one, that has been very effective. We need Levi, we need Pascal, we need those guys, Trevor Nowaski, we need those guys to dominate that matchup. I need those guys to dominate tight ends one-on-one in this game. That could be the swing for how this game goes. If you see their tight ends moving our edge rushers, we might be in a little bit of trouble. If we see those guys dominating, I'm sure we're having a lot of success against this offense. They are also a very heavy, wide rushing attack. Toss plays, stretch plays. So scraping linebackers are very key. Their offensive line is athletic. They do a really nice job. Garrett Bradbury gets out to the second level. He kicks well. He gets out to the second level. He cuts off blocks, creates these big runs, everything towards the sideline. They are very good in those spots, and they create these massive cutback lanes on these wide zone rushing plays where they can get backside A gap, backside B gap, I should say, backside B gap with Aaron Jones. He can go all the way across formation, and they kind of just let him live in that world. Here on this toss
stretch. You can see the center position. They're able to scoop and they're able to get up to these linebackers and just create a wall off the backside. So the front side needs to do a really nice job of creating some sort of push, some sort of penetration. Here you get the pin pull look, and again, they get up to that second level, hit the linebacker. They block DBs well. They'll use CJ Ham, and here the offensive linemen are just taking off into the second level.
So scraping is going to be important, as well as safety run support, which is why, back to my first point, stopping the run first is the priority, in my opinion. You have to do that first. Now, if you play with a 2-score lead, you start to pull them out of that, now you're in a great spot, and that's where we haven't seen the Vikings this year. So I think they would struggle in that spot. That being said, they haven't been there. Focus on stopping the run first. I think that's where you have to put your attention first in this game.
You can see the stress they create with a play like this. Watch Bradbury with the strong combo blocks in the inside of this outside zone look, and they split off it with CJ Ham. You see how the B gap was basically crashed down as the linebacker fills through the A gap. They're basically both pushed there. There is no B gap essentially on the play, so you get this wide open run lane. And then here on this next cutback run, you notice the tight end position on the backside, but you also notice the center doesn't seemingly give much help, which just allows Kenny Clark to get the one-on-one and create that inside push and that penetration. You have to take advantage of the interior when they have some mistakes like this and they don't hedge and they don't give any help. That being said, though, it's about that backside, because as you see here, between Darrisaw, who moves well and positions well, and the tight end position that creates a wall in this play, they still get that cutback run because Aaron Jones is very quick to get outside and attack these edges.
Now, they're flip to that against the Lions, potentially bringing a slot blitz, trying to slant gaps, trying to create negatives on early downs for running the football, because if you look at the play-by-play tendency basis, they are a pretty run-heavy first-down team. If we do start bringing slot blitzing to try to slant gaps off of that, we may see some boot action plays. Kevin O'Connell is super smart, and that's what's, to me, made this offense so good this year. As much tension as Brian Flores gets, he's terrific. So is Kevin O'Connell, and that's because a team can kind of make an adjustment, and about 2 plays later, he's got a beater for it. He's like, you know what? Let's get to this. We got somebody wide open. And that's what he did against Packers. It was like, oh, they're going to bring a 5-man rush a little bit in the second half. 2 plays later, 5-man rush, man coverage, boom. It's like a crossing route, Justin Jefferson like 30 yards. That's just what he does. He is a terrific coach that adjusts very quickly. He adapts very quickly. So it may be difficult to constantly be ahead of him finding answers, but if you can simplify it and just play fast and play aggressive, you can put more of the stress on Sam Darnold rather than on beating Kevin O'Connell at his game. I think a Meeks run support as well as safety run support is again massive, and having Brian Branch will be huge in this game. Now, getting back to Sam Darnold in his passing attack, as I told you, the things that he does well, a couple of things. First off, he will force the ball downfield against zone coverage. So if he's behind the chains third and long, that's where he'll be a little dangerous. He'll just force the ball kind of downfield to something that's not really there. I don't think he constantly has clear vision when he has to push the ball down the field, where it's like, it's not just like not throwing the ball away. It's that he has somebody else open and he's like kind of locked in on like, the design is Justin Jefferson, I'm throwing that. Or the wheel that he threw to his running back that he threw a pick against the Packers in the red zone. It was like, why did you throw that ball? That wasn't really open. But the design was to go there. So you get this guy in the third and long plus, you get him playing from behind potentially. He starts to be a little bit overly aggressive, pushing the ball down the field against zone coverage. 3rd and 10 plus, particularly saw it against the Jets, that cover 6 look. He threw the pick to the safety. Just felt a little bit overly aggressive, not maybe necessary, and he throws an interception.
Or you get this, where some examples where he seems a little bit hesitant to let it rip. Even with a pretty good pocket here, going into this kind of cover 2 look here defensively, you could see the wheel route with the post, putting the safety kind of in between, and rather than holding one guy off and trying to take the shot, he's pretty hesitant to let this pass rip, so he holds it, waits for the middle, and then just throws it really late on the play where it's never really open.
So that's where I think he gets into trouble a little bit more, because if you look at him statistically, when blitz this season, he's completing actually a higher percent of his passes than when not blitzed, 64.5%, 3 touchdowns, no picks when blitzed, but also a 10.5 yards per attempt. He's going to push the ball down the field, and even though they haven't always cost him, he gets a little bit questionable at times in those spots, still willing to just take the one-on-one singled up shot. So obviously there could be a downside to that, but I just think in general, it's not about blitzing him as much as it is getting him back in 3rd and long, because that's where he'll be kind of a little bit overly aggressive. But overall, when not blitzed, 8 touchdowns, 4 picks when not blitzed, it could be a little bit late in some spots, reading the coverage or being late on 3rd down with his timing, and just being a little bit, feels like kind of indecisive at times. It was like with his throws, where he's kind of just waiting a little bit too long before just ripping some of these passes, and I think that gets him into trouble on some of the third and longer looks when you're playing physical man coverage and you're kind of bumping and throwing off the timing of these routes. First down, again, heavy run team to me. You're going to see a lot of toss stretch plays, outside zones, especially with Aaron Jones. They're going to do a lot of things wide. This is a more heavy run team on first down, so I expect Aaron Glenn to probably be pretty aggressive in those spots. At very least, maybe be a little bit aggressive with the safeties, giving a little bit of run support there, but they can shut that down without doing anything. Maybe he's not. Regardless, though, that's who they are first and foremost. foremost. So I think just being able to stop that and being able to rely on DJ Reader and Aleem to help us a ton there, because they're probably going to go this way, knowing that going upfield is probably not going to be the best bet. They're probably going to go wide. Cornerbacks, linebackers scraping, edge defenders. If we slow that down, it shakes this offense. That being said, though, they're probably going to get everything wide because of what we have in the interior, and it just makes sense. Like, it doesn't make sense if you're the Vikings, say, let's go get downhill against these guys. It's like, hey, let's get a little bit outside on these guys. They don't have much to say. Let's go where he was and make these defensive backs tackle. We know they will, but that's our best matchup, and these linemen do a really good job out at the second level. They'll use lead in a lot of those spots with Ham leading the way, so it can make it really difficult. Pin pull looks. I would expect to see a lot of those outside runs against us in this game. Moving on to second down, and second down at medium specifically, one of the concepts they love to use is the mesh concept, man or zone. They love to utilize the mesh concept offensively. We'll talk about that more in a second. On second and long spots, a lot of times you'll get screens, whether it's running back or tight end, especially once they get up to near midfield. Even on 1st and 10, you'll see screens. A lot of times that's really pick up chunk plays. They're really good in terms of timing of like, oh, we're expecting a blitz, there's the blitz, and then they pick up a big chunk play. So second down and medium, second down and long specifically, probably not the best time to blitz. I would say that's the time to maybe drop 8. That's the time to maybe go man and try to take away those, but really tell your D-line, like, hey, be focused that this is probably going to be a screen. They're probably not going to try to push the ball down the field. They want to try to get this back as a chunk by going underneath, not constantly asking Darnold to push the ball down the field in an obvious passing situation, because for them, seemingly they want third and medium, they want third and short, and if you watch them, they don't really trust their run in a lot of spots to get those, because if you look at them on third down and short, they're actually more of a pass-heavy team from what I've seen. They like to throw the ball on third and short, weirdly enough. I don't think they trust to run constantly to go get that. Maybe with Aaron Jones, that changes a little bit. Staying with that, though, that's where second down, to me, creates the opportunity for simulated pressure. Not blitzing, but simulated. Hey, we bring in a slot corner. There's where we could maybe get an unblocked guy. Maybe we drop out a linebacker. That's where I think simulated pressure could be much more effective on second down rather than bring maybe a full-out blitz. But we'll see. I could be completely off with that in terms of how Aaron Glenn plays this. But second and like 8+, he's going to also want to take one-on-one shots. So they're going to want running back screens, and if you give them a single-eye safety look, they're going to probably take a one-on-one shot towards the outside with Justin Jefferson. Anytime he feels like he has one-on-one, usually you're going to get a shot play at the Justin Jefferson, usually some sort of fade route. A lot of times we're going to see second down in medium situations, you're going to get more of like the chunk play they're going to try to pick up, because they're in second, third, and medium. They're probably going to throw it on third down anyway, so it doesn't feel like they're really like, oh, we have to make it 3rd and 1, because they're probably not going to run the ball on 3rd and 1. So if it's 3rd and 5, they'll probably try to get a chunk play on 2nd and 5. That's just kind of how they do things tendency-wise. So 3rd and long, they're going to get a shot play one-on-one, or you're probably going to get a 2nd and long, you're probably going to get a shot play or a screen. But then on 2nd and medium, you're probably going to get a shot chunk play they're going to try to pick up with a deep drop, 3-step drop, or really a play action set. Seemingly worried about making it 3rd and 5 if it's incomplete, because hey, they'll go back and they know they're going to throw it again, especially if they're in plus territory offensively. So that's where you got to look for like those deep curl routes. They kind of try to spread you out. They do a nice job of kind of overlapping a certain zone with like, here's the deep crosser, then the dig that works right back behind it for Justin Jefferson. And we know he's really good because they work a lot of deep crossing routes, especially against man. So if the lines go man heavy, they do a great job with deep crossers and these long developing plays like post corner routes where you got to just chase guys and they just eventually are going to get open. So they do a nice job with very long-winded routes, which is why on first down I think will be aggressive, but in those spots, that's where you're going to get some of those longer-winded routes. Watch for motion number 1, because they're going to try to use motion pre-snap to find matchups that they like, but also create rub setups specifically. As we know, teams have done that against us. The team that probably did it best was Seattle, but also just creating leverage in those spots. They can just create leverage to get an outside release when they want to go set up a corner route. They'll do that. They'll set up leverage out of those spots. I thought the Jets did a pretty poor job at kind of simple things where it's like, hey, we got to communicate pre-snap. They're in a bunch here, but we should be able to get the proper depth that we're not running into each other. And then they run into each other. Or a running back would run a flat and the receiver would run like an over route and he'd run into the linebacker. Like that was the kind of thing that Jets were doing, and it was a mess. I think it's very fine to play man against this team. You just can't have simple things like that happening, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to set up rub plays, but specifically they're going to try to do everything they can to just try to create leverage, and then they're going to go one-on-one and they're going to trust that. But to me, a reason I have some confidence is not as much of, hey, our cornerbacks are just going to shut down Jefferson and Addison. It's more so, especially without Hawkinson, that I think that Darnold hasn't been incredibly accurate on some of those tight window throws, in my opinion. So because of that, I think actually if he's got to go one-on-one, he's got to push the ball 8 yards down the field, and it's got to be a deep out route on the money. I don't always trust him that he's actually going to be on time, that he might be a little bit behind. He lets their player back into the play. And we got some ball hawks at the catch point now that can at least get their hands in and just be a disruption. So I think man is absolutely fine on third down. You just have to be aware of that. The flats, the corner routes, that's where they're going to try to get you and kind of single up some of those singled up matchups one-on-one. There was actually the play against the Jets. Jets were doing is they were just passing off the vertical routes in those spots to their safety. And that way they were able to bracket in Justin Jefferson. So they weren't able to create leverage by pushing vertical and then running playing corner route underneath with Jefferson, an outside, route where he had outside leverage. Instead, they bracket in by just saying, hey, free safety, you take that. It's just a clear out. We're going to focus on Jefferson. And as always, the focus is always on Jefferson. It's third down, focus on Jefferson. If you're going cover 3, slide your safety over there. It's just what teams do. If it's cover 1, slide your safety over there. If you're playing cover 1, you got a rat, slide your linebacker. But like, give some help to Jefferson. That's probably going to be where the ball's going more often than not on third down, especially if it's more of a third and longer situation. Now, that being said, I don't have any issue with the cover 6. I don't have any issue with the zone coverage on third down. As I said, it works well. That's where Darnold, to me, gets dangerous, is trying to push the ball down the field when he's trying to kind of hit sticks, and all of a sudden the windows start to close, and it's not just a very simplified, like, oh, here's a one-on-one, just throw the one-on-one. And he's got to make a tight window decision, and the timing just feels a little bit off. I don't trust him in those spots at all. So if we get him in third and long, I feel good in those. It's got to be in a spot where the check down and the scramble can't kill you, and that's the balance that's difficult to find, is that's where he's been tough, because I don't think the Lions are going to get maybe a great four-man rush. Hopefully they do. Hopefully they dominate their interior line, but if they're not, the problem is he's been so dangerous, more so to me on checkdowns, their tight ends, the chip flats, the delayed routes out of the backfield, or him just taking off and running, and he's picking up these big third and long conversions because teams are just dropping in his zone and not letting him push the ball in the field, and he doesn't like it, so he just takes care of it and he takes off. That's a problem in zone because everybody starts to kind of back up to that distance, and I think that's the concern that you have to have in those spots. That's actually the biggest concern I have, more so than anything, is actually the little checkdowns and everything that will happen underneath.
And I'm not saying it'll happen every time, but you can definitely use disguises against Sam Darnold and find success. Like here, for example, Green Bay is kind of using their own medicine against him. They're going to show everybody on the line, they're going to drop out. Safety's going to roll to cover 3. Their one safety that's showing single high is going to drop down into that sky roll out to the right side of the formation, and he's going to have the out, but he does not trust it for whatever reason to let it rip fast enough, so he kind of holds on to it. And then again, that slot corner blitz, nobody picks it up. That's how you get the free rusher, and all of a sudden you get a sack because he did not want to throw the football.
I think cover 3 is a fine scheme to play against this team a lot, but you leave the singled up receivers on the outside. You just have to be aggressive to say we're taking away the sideline, we're taking away the out routes. Downside of that, you give up double moves like they did against the Green Bay Packers. The one touchdown they had, he bit on it. It was like, why'd he bite? Probably because he was playing aggressively on the deep out route, and he gives up a touchdown. So that's the danger. Of course, that's a back and forth battle, but it's not a bad coverage to run because you can create depth. You can kind of clog those lanes a little bit. Then you have eyes on Sam Darnold if he's trying to take off, and you're leaving it singled up, and you're getting a lot more run support. I don't know if the Lions will do that a ton. It's not a bad coverage. It's had some success. That's just a concern, is you are getting constant one-on-ones in those spots, but you're also making it to throw sideline to sideline, especially on the boundary. If you're a little bit more aggressive, it can be very difficult for him to find those passes that he likes, that he's very comfortable with in those spots. Also, then you don't get the matchup of against man coverage where he's using these deep crossers and these long developing routes that become a problem, or the corner routes out of bunch setups as well, where they're doing really well in pass pro, and these long developing routes just ultimately get open. I would say I like from the Lions to show man coverage and occasionally just drop in a zone. I think that could give Sam Darnold problems.
So, for example, here in the red zone, you get this China setup where you're going to have the 2 underneath kind of in-breaking routes, and then the number 3 receiver is going to run this corner to the back of the end zone. But defensively, again, you're in a position where you can disguise coverage. You show everybody at the line. You drop out with the safety over top. Corner can then step down, play aggressively in zone, take away the 2 underneath routes, take away the corner route. He has nowhere to go, and you force a throwaway.
His read's just not there, and then he doesn't know where to go with the football. So that show man, drop in his zone. They're expecting us to play man probably, so then drop in his zone coverage. And the second thing on top of that is, again, slot blitzing, simulated pressure to me is a must. Then once again, the red zone, as always, we need creative Aaron Glenn to come out, because to me, this is a very difficult offense to stop. They have so many weapons. They can simplify it, and we're just trying to get a guy one-on-one. We just want to clear out, get this guy one-on-one. If Jefferson is ever one-on-one, it looks like that pre-snap, the safety's not standing over top of him. Once they get about 25 yards in, it's probably throwing a fade to Justin Jefferson one-on-one, and they usually are going to get a DPI because that's how the refs do it, even if it's incomplete. So if they get inside the 30, probably going to get a one-on-one to Jefferson, probably going to get a shot in that spot, and they have so many weapons one-on-one that they're difficult to stop in those spots, and they are running the ball much better this season, so they're really tough there. Ham gets involved, and they use Darnold's legs, and their pass pro has been so good in those spots that they've been pretty difficult.
This is the kind of look where I think the Lions really could get one turnover, and I think utilizing your safeties could be the way to do that. Number one, bringing the cornerback off the edge and having the safety bail over top of the snap. Making them think the fade is there. Sam Darnold's got him wide open. Safety rolls over and just plays the football because they're probably not going to run a hitch. They run fades inside the 20. So I bring that corner off the edge. I make him think he has it, take that shot, and I have the safety sitting over there.
And to create pressure, I think we're going to see some 3-by-1 looks where you kind of overload one side of the offensive line. You create stunts on that side. A lot of times, probably going to be towards the right side with O'Neal and Ingram, who's in the game, and Bradbury. Probably trying to put those guys in the mix and leaving a one-on-one with Darrisaw. I think we'll see some of that. Of course, you have to worry about the run, but if it's long enough, that's not a big concern. I think we're going to see some of that. We're going to see a lot of stunts. We're going to try to make these guards kind of chase our guys around because that's probably their biggest weakness up front. They communicate well, but just chasing guys, they slide well, but chasing guys can be a little bit of a problem. Overall in this game, I think that their offense is actually the biggest concern because I think their offense is very tricky. They have so many weapons, and we've seen it now, is they are tough to slow down. They are very difficult to slow down, and this has to be complementary, I think, to slow this team down, where you have to lean on your offense to help you slow them down on that side of the ball. This has been the most complementary team maybe in football this year, running the football, throwing the football, defending the pass, defending the run. They've been great at everything. They play with the lead all the time. They constantly feel like they're winning the turnover battle. This is just the most consistent team that I've seen week to week in the NFL to this point, game in and game out, and that's why they are 5-0 heading into this game. So Lions are going to have their handful with this one. I'm not really worried about our offense. I think they're going to have success at times. Vikings will, but I'm not concerned. I just know this is a very well-rounded team at this point. So I did tweak my score a little bit. I feel like my score might just be too low. Initially, I didn't like it because I think my score was too low. I didn't hate the gap that I had, but I thought my score was just too low. And I still think this might be a little low, which is kind of my concern. I feel like I should maybe bump up a couple more points for each side here, but I'm going to roll with it. We'll see. I think Carlton Davis gets an interception in this game, and I hope he does. Just give me one so I can talk some crap on the round table. Give me one interception, Carlton. I think he's going to have a good game. I'm excited to see the matchup. I think Aaron Glenn's going to let him play that matchup. I wouldn't be surprised when Lions get in the red zone offensively that we just see goal line runs, 4 straight runs, get downhill, simplify things offensively, take out all the creativity and just go downhill in those spots. But it's going to be tough to stop Minnesota from scoring touchdowns, I think, because they're really good in pass protection. That's going to be the real challenge there. I'm going to go 26-21. Lions win this game over the Vikings, 26-21. We get a couple more field goals than they do. So I'll leave it there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you, Prop, for watching, and I'm out.